Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Show Up with Camron Gran. I am your host, Camron Gran, and as a reminder, I'm not a therapist. I'm just somebody going on his own mental health journey, trying to give you guys little tips and tricks that you guys can try. But just remember to advocate for yourself because only you know what works in your brain, and all I can do is hopefully, just give you a glimmer of something you might not have tried, and maybe it might help you a little bit. I always say that because I just know how hard it is right now, especially with all the different things that are trying to teach us things that weren't like some are reliable, some are not. But if you've ever come across something and you are struggling, I am an advocate for just trying it and seeing how it works in your brain. For instance, not everybody loves Mary Kondo. Like, I love her because the way that she organizes stuff is very much attuned to how I organize things. And so, I like giving something like, oh, thank you for being in my life for this set amount of time, but I'm ready to release you. And I like that mentality, and some people find that a little bit hokey, and that's fine because maybe it doesn't work for you. And I just wanted to give that example of something that, works for me that I know has been spoken about that doesn't always work perfectly for other people. Today, I thought I would do a little update, mostly because if you're looking, you can see these boxes behind me. That's if you're on YouTube. Those are there because I am currently getting ready to move. I'm not going very far. Far enough that I have to drive, but not so far that I'm like, ooh, new state, goodbye. I could still come visit if I really wanted to the area I'm in, but I'm ready to just have a clean slate. I'm ready to get out of this area because I came here in 2020 and this has been the area I've occupied the most in Minnesota, and I need to release the energy that I feel surrounds me when I'm here, mostly because I'm ready for a fresh start. And sometimes when you're in the same environment, it's hard to get that fresh start because it's not really you're surrounded and you're going through the same experiences. It's just that energy kind of just is always present no matter how much you try to ignore it. And that's kind of why I'm you know what? It's time. I can move. Luckily, not so luckily, because the reason why I thought of this is because unfortunately in 2022, I was in a car accident, and because of that, I have a lot of back problems. But I am now aware that especially if I move by myself, which unfortunately I am, I might need more time to move. And a lot of people they give you a week and you have to move, and if you're not moving you have to pay for extra time. But I was lucky enough that I found a place that is able to had a sale going on, or whatever you call it, where they give you a little bit of a leeway. We're oh, sign on and we'll give you the first month free. And so because of that, I was able to kind of pay only one rent and then move my stuff over the course of February to the other place, and hopefully doing it bit by bit, it will be a lot easier on me than doing it all at once. And my brain is kind of get it and be done with it, and I don't want to set up my new place like that. I want to make sure that I prepare it for success. I've been watching and listening to it's a lie, I almost lied to you guys. I listen to a lot of Office Ladies with Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey, and they have a network now, and they have a lot of things that are kind of focusing on what's important rather than spending all our time on things that we can't control. Because we all have these things that we can do for our community, and we all have these things we can do for ourselves. And it's important to still and be involved in the community, but make sure that we know the barriers for ourselves, or even our own limitations, and also our own faults. But accepting ourselves for these faults. And that's kind of what I wanted to make this episode. I have recently come to the conclusion, and I say this a lot to you guys, so I understand you're Cameron, another conclusion? Yes, there's another conclusion. I'm sorry if my conclusions bother you. Sorry. It's just that I realize that a fatal flaw that I have is that I exist and encounter people in the gray zone. Because, my brain works best when either I am completely accepted by somebody else or I'm completely rejected. And then when I have to start playing the boundary game, that's when I start, I think, becoming the worst version of myself, because I'm worried about navigating a boundary rather than just saying, hey, I like you. These are the things that I need in a friendship. And if that's not good for you, please tell me, and I'm fine with us not being friends. Or I'm okay if you just want to be acquaintances where we're not ill-willed towards each other, but I want you to know me completely up front because I don't want to waste time on somebody if you don't want to actually embrace me as a person, if that makes sense. It's like, I know it sounds like it's normal talking, but like I was realized my fatal flaw with dating is very much a very weird landscape, and I feel like a lot of people know the rules, and I don't think I ever got that class, nor do I think anybody like friends or family ever really like sat down with me and tried to navigate that space with me. I've tried, but a lot of the people that I started doing that with wanted to speak to me about their relationship stuff, but didn't really want to like help me with mine. And so also it doesn't really help that I am part of the LGBT community and not everybody knows how to navigate that, especially if you are a straight person. Because unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I don't understand it, but I get that I'm one person in a larger community, because I think that we shouldn't have to have different ways of dating, but it feels like we do. And so when I talk to people about the way that I'm being taught, it's very interesting, especially because I love me a rom-com. And very few rom-coms are actually like showing these kind of relationships with LGBTQ people. And so it's hard, like, but every rom-com tells you like expectations and like, you know, at what stage. I'm not going to bring up Hitch because like that guy has been debunked before, and it's not really the pace and like the energy that I want to be throwing out there, even though I love that movie and I find it hilarious. And I think that there is, I think, a world in which having a coach could be helpful, especially if you're rather nervous and shy like I am. But also, it's interesting that like we can get into these like bad rhythms of listening to advice from others, especially when they are just saying, follow my advice. They're not like, hey, tell me about yourself. Like, these are my methods, but like, how do I fit my method to you as an individual? And that's something that I struggle with a lot, is it's like, oh, these are good ways other people are doing about it, but I don't operate that way, so I don't understand it. And it's a very interesting dynamic, let's just say, because for me, I realized the thing that was happening was I need to communicate. It is something that I need as a human being. Not everybody does. I also know that I'm going to break down like a relationship thing for you guys. I need to communicate, but I don't know like at what level you're supposed to like freely communicate. And then I'm like, well, you really need it, and so you really should just open with that and just openly communicate from the get-go. And people can accept that or leave it. It's up to you as a human being, and I'm fine with that. But by playing the have we been dating long enough that I can talk to you about like my past, or like my ideas of the future, or like, are we dating long enough that I can set up a boundary that is too much for me to handle as a human being, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, when can I set up boundaries? Like all these things where you're like, oh, I just don't know, like, if it's the first date, can you do this? Or if it's the third date or fifth date, like, when can you start doing that stuff? And I'm just like, I'm not going to play, like, at what date can I do this? Because that is a nightmare for me. And I realize that's the reason why I am still single, because the boundary game of not knowing when to open up usually leaves me in gray. And so my habit when I am existing in that gray zone is to withdraw entirely and never speak again. Because speaking about things that are hard were so scary for me that I'd rather disappear than actually talk about those hard things. Even though they're only hard because we as a society and as humans think that we know other people because of the habits and characters and people that we've grown up with, if that makes sense. Mind reading, unless you are Suki Stackhouse from True Blood, love that book by Charlene Harris. I have the entire series. Unless you are an actual mind reader, are very, very good at telling the future, you really should not play, I know exactly what this person is going to say, because you don't. It's really all you're doing is playing this game inside your own mind where you're like psyching yourself out, or you're just like, why won't this person hold my hand? Why can't, well, the real question for you, instead of being like, why won't this person hold my hand? It's been a couple of dates. Are we've been dating and this person hasn't really kissed me? But like, why in that scenario? Why aren't you initiating a kiss? Or like, I am somebody who needs a vocal, like enthusiastic consent is a thing, and I am somebody who romantically I need enthusiastic consent and vocal agreement to do something. And other people are really good with reading vibes, and for that I say good for you. I am terrible at reading situations. I don't always know if I'm picking things up, and I will ask questions and be like, "Do you hate me?" or like, "Are you interested?" Like, look, these are thoughts that I have, and but with friends or acquaintances or work people, it's easier for me to be like, "Hey, I said a joke and I thought that we were good, but then the way that you reacted to the joke by either being completely silent or just like ditching me and then no longer like meeting my eyes, like then I'm like, oh, something happened that I'm not aware of. Maybe I should go talk to this person because we used to be very talkative and now all of a sudden you're avoiding me." But like that's an environmental change happening. It's not me registering something in the moment in like an exchange. And unfortunately, that's a character flaw. I'm trying to work on it. And I'm okay with that character flaw because I'm going to say some things about myself that sound like judgments to other people, but I don't judge me for these things. It's just things that I know about, and like I call it a character flaw because it's one of my goals of like I do this thing, but I want to make it something that I do less because it is holding me back from better opportunities for myself, and I want those better opportunities or those better life like circumstances, if that makes sense. But it's okay to vocalize your faults is what I'm saying, but you can also love your faults because they're part of you. And that's something that I'm working on because I realized there are so many friendships that I've had. Some of them I've ended and they make sense, and some of them are still around because I, as a human being, because I am a communicator, and because I love so deeply friends, family, like I stop talking. If you know me and I've stopped talking to you, it's because the gray zone got so bad for me that the idea of like exchanging anymore was too much, and so I dipped rather than having an uncomfortable conversation. And some people that I've dipped, I don't think I want to open up again with, and then there are other people where I'm like, oh, but this person isn't amazing, and they've always shown up for me when I've given them those chances, but because I would have to have an uncomfortable conversation with them, I kind of lost out on what could have been an amazing friendship, because I do care about these people a lot. And that's something that I've realized is like, oh, well, sometimes the reason why these habits start, or the way you start going about doing these certain circumstances, is because they're like, oh, this was a coping mechanism for really bad scenarios. But now you're using it to prevent yourself from having what could be good relationships with people and friends and really anybody. And for instance, a lot. I am, because I was talking about being very communicative. I reached out to a couple people that I had dated and then ghosted. Well, I'm saying that I ghosted, but really they are uncomfortable conversations that I feel like instead of challenging somebody when they were ghosting me, I was just like, okay, well, I guess they're just ghosting me. But I don't like doing that. Like if maybe I'll do it for like one date and done kind of people. But like if we've gone on a couple of dates, that's when I start questioning it. I'm like, oh, this person deserved to be like told that I wasn't interested. But I like, if I'm not interested in somebody, I am somebody who still feels like that you should tell them and like value their time, because time is precious to all of us. But I reserve that to people that like I've gone in multiple exchanges for, not so much people that I'm barely meeting. We might have barely had an exchange, but it's like that's like I feel like that's the balance of ghosting. I was watching a show. I don't remember what it was called, but they were talking about the term petering out. It's when instead of ghosting, maybe it was Abbott Elementary, but instead of ghosting someone, you kind of like bring your energy level from 100 to like 90, 80, 70. And so you just respond less and less through text, and like you call less and less until eventually it's like, oh, is this person even in my life anymore? They kind of just dipped and are no longer here. That's petering out ghosting. And I've done that to people. But what's funny about that is I've done that while adamantly trying in my head not to ghost people. But because of the gray zone, I was like, well, this is awkward. And I don't know if like we're at the stage of where I should do that, because the way I think about things I know is not how other people would do it, because I have been told I communicate a lot more than other people would ever. And that is a fault that other people have placed on me that I'm now conscious of. Whereas I value that. And so I feel like I should let that go, because they're trying to tell me not to do that anymore because they think it's a character flaw. Where if I value it, I really should just make sure it's the thing that I present to you the most. For instance, I have been going to some classes with improv, and I really like people that I do improv with, but you're doing improv classes, and so I would love to be friends with all of them. But like when I open up a friendship, I'm kind of like an all-in friend, and it's like when you don't tell people this, or you're not like trying to communicate with them to make those kind of things happen, it's like, oh, are we just people who hang out like once a week or once a month to do improv? Or are we actually friends that are trying to like, set up times to hang out, go to a movie, or like go out to dinner together? Or, I mean, they have occasionally gone out to bars with them, but it's just like one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm doing this because we're all chatting and we're doing it. I'm not like going out of my way to like set up individual friend dates with them. Friend dates are just platonic dates with people. For people who don't know, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't said that to myself. So that's why I had to explain that to you guys. But the gray zone is a recent thing. And then I was also in a group with a lot of friends for playing D&D. And I realized, oh, I care about all these people, but I'm the new person and I have questions. And it's like you don't know when to pop in to ask a question, because I am an actor and I love character acting where you're just fully in the moment with them. But I've also been kind of doing things in my brain for so long that I'm like, I need to get back to being in character. I used to be able to jump into that so easily, but it's been a minute. And so now it's like balancing, oh, I would rather wait till after a session to ask questions, but I especially if I'm ruining somebody else's experience. But those are just like little questions that you can ask in the moment. But an example of something in a relationship that I need that other people may not know is touching, our physical intimacy. Not like anything sexual. It's like really touching. Reason why is my brain needs a reassurance that like we're good, and like touching is one of those things for me. It's like if somebody like holds my hand or like squeezes it or like touches my shoulder, it's a physical action that makes me feel like they're telling me that we're solid, and we don't have to talk about it. And that kind of stuff makes my life so much easier, because as somebody who has 1,000 thoughts in their head, having little moments that take up a second instead of having to have a conversation makes it so much easier for me. But the thing that I realized, especially in the dating game, is you're like, not everybody is like, touching isn't their way of showing it. And I think that's like, because this is what I love about the conversation people have when they're like, what is your love language? People are like active service, gifts, physical touching. Like I know there's two more that are, I mean, communication, hopefully, is one of those 5 things. But like, there are different things that I'm not remembering. But the point I was making is like, if I need physical, like touching to like know that we're good in a relationship, I should tell my partner that. I can't like assume that they would know that, or that somebody isn't interested because they don't do that innately. Like, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, well, I don't think these people are interested because they're not like trying to hold my hand, or they're not trying to initiate something. instead of having that conversation in my head, I should be like, hey, I don't know where you're at, and you can take it at your own pace. But I just want to let you know that like physical like gestures are how I know somebody is interested. That's how my brain knows that like we're good and we are actually pursuing something romantic. And if we're not touching is a good signal for we're just friends or not interested. And that's just how my brain works. And if that's not the vibe you're trying to give me, that's fine. But just know that when you are ready to do that, like those things, I need this in a relationship, like, because I don't know. I don't know why, to be honest. It's just something that I need, and I hopefully the other person will be like, oh well, I need acts of service, or like that's a big part of like. I think that we all assume, because movies are a huge thing, that we all are living in the same benchmark of like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, like what steps to take when you are interested. It's like it can be a lot, and I am just tired of playing that mental game of being like, are we at the stage of this? Are we at the stage of this? I'm like, no. I'm going to be upfront. I'm going to tell them what I need. And I'm going to tell them I'm interested, obviously, if it's dating. And then I'm going to be like, I'm interested. Physical touching is important. Communication is probably number one before that, because I'm a communicator. I will talk to you. I also am okay with silence if I know we're solid. Like, that's what people don't understand. I cannot tell you how many people have told me, wow, Cameron, every time we talk to each other, it's like sometimes our conversations last 2 to 3 hours. And me, I'm like, you're telling me this as though it's a character flaw, but like, I want you to know that I am a communicator. I think so much, and I'm trying to like get back into mindfulness and meditation to just quiet down my brain, because I've realized other people don't think about me as much as I think about them. And it's not like the world's about me. I'm the number one person. Pick me. Like, it's not like any of that stuff's going on in my brain. It's that like I think about all my friends and a lot of my family. Not all of them, because some of them you could throw them out the window, like that famous song says. But like I think about them constantly, all the time. And the reason why I don't call you all the time is because you never answer the phone. Or I have been told that it's a bit much by them. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try once a week. So like we've communicated like, hey, Cameron, love ya, but I can't talk to you every day. And I'm like, that's great. Thank you. That's clear for me. And I'm like, not wanting to talk to me every day. That's just you needing like space for yourself, or that's you telling me that you don't like me. Like that would probably be my follow-up to that question, to be honest. To be like, are you telling me that you don't like me, you don't want to talk anymore, or you're just saying you just need like a little less talking for your own brain? Because I can give you that less talking if as long as it's not about me, I can give you that less talking, if that makes sense. I was like, if there's an issue, tell me, but if it's just that you need something for you and your own mental stuff, I'm okay with that. I almost triggered my own freak out, and I'm not gonna do that because there was no reason to, because this is a fake scenario. But it's just something that I realized about myself. Oh, and it's also, please, 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 if you are in the gray zone and you talk to somebody else, before you start a conversation, take a deep breath and think to yourself, I know that I love my sister or my brother or my mom or my dad a lot. And I know that I've lived, like, especially if it's a family member like that, and I know they've known me the whole 29 years I've been alive. And I know I've known them the 30 years that they've been alive. And it's because of that history, I know every little thought in their head, so I know who this person is, and I'm not gonna like let them be themselves when I ask them questions. It's this trap I feel like our brain creates where it's like, I have this idea of my best friend Jerry, not a real person because I've never met a Jerry in my life who wasn't Tom and Jerry, but Jerry is amazing. Jerry, I think he's the mouse. He likes to run around with cheese and get away from Tom. But Jerry, he doesn't talk a lot. He kind of just runs for me. And I thought we were best friends because I've never eaten you, because I'm Tom in this scenario. But sometimes I feel like we're not friends and I want to sit Jerry down and talk to him. It's like, but if I talk to Jerry, I should give him a chance to respond and not just instantly reach out trying to catch him. It's like, if I want to make Jerry my friend now, I probably should actually give him a chance to respond and be like, hey, Tom, you might be fooling around trying to chase me all the time, but I'm a mouse and you're a cat, so it makes me feel like you're trying to kill me. It's like that's a reasonable like exchange in Tom and Jerry logic, I guess. But it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, well, just because Tom is constantly chasing Jerry doesn't mean that Jerry knows what's going on in Tom's head. So Jerry needs to like forget what he knows about Tom and ask Tom directly to respond. And Tom needs to do the same thing. Be like, hey, Jerry, I know that you love pie, but you don't really like ever help me get pie, and that makes me jealous. Why no pie, Jerry? It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like we have these judgments about people, but that's not the real person. So like I say, take a breath and forget about your perception of them. Forget about what you believe them to be for a second and just give them the opportunity to respond in their own words. Because we all have a way that we think somebody else is going to respond, and we all have an opinion about who so and so is. But just because you have an opinion and you think you know how they're going to respond doesn't mean that they will. I mean, sure, everybody has a track record, sure. But I'm saying in the moment after you've started an exchange, give that person a chance to respond actually. Like, I can't tell you how hurtful it is to me that I have a relationship that ended, and the reason we're no longer like friends or whatever we were is because the person that they viewed me as was not me, period. That's a boundary and a reality that I will never accept, because I was never talked to. I was never actually exchanged with. I was never believed when I, the human, actually responded and told them how I felt. This is a group of people, but I'm not going to go into this more. But it's just like, I realized in that exchange, I was like, oh, somebody sees my face, like you are now, and they think that they know me, but they don't want to actually let me respond as the real person. They want to assume they know who I am because they see my face. It's like when somebody watches The Office and they think that they know Ellie Kemper, even though she plays, what's her name? Erin on The Office. They're two different people, but because it's like this happens a lot with sitcom actors where like we think that we know Matt LeBlanc or Courtney Cox or Jennifer Aniston because we've seen them so long, and then sitcoms are in everybody's house and they get played so much that we think they know them as people. When we know, like, we only know that show, we don't know them actually. But we're like, come on, Courtney, why don't you do the Monica thing? Sorry, Chandler's the only one that has like a catchphrase, or Joey has, how you doing? But it's like, it's like you see somebody and then they're like, oh, they can only be this thing to me. They can't be real. Like, I can't give them that permission. And that's kind of something that isn't related to grayscale, but it's kind of the start of it is like, I have been constantly not given permission to be myself, and I have been in trouble a lot for not understanding boundaries, even though it's like the world is big and we all grow up in different like circumstances. We all grow up in different like spaces, and we all have different rules that we follow. And I like to give somebody an opportunity when I ask them a question to confirm something that upset me before I actually get upset. Because, like, I don't speak clearly all the time. Sometimes I think I say something and then somebody will reflect it back to me. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not what I meant at all. Especially with my face. This face, yes. Everyone's like resting, like angry face. And sometimes I'll be telling somebody that I really care and I value what they're saying to me, but my face looks so angry. They're like, are you going to hurt me? I was like, No, my face is boiling red because of how upset I am that I upset you. But this news is shocking to me, and so maybe you're seeing the initial reaction I have that this is a thing I wasn't aware of, or maybe it is a little hurtful, but my hurt usually doesn't really outweigh for me how much I care about somebody else, if that makes sense. Like, I value other people a lot, and I think that more of us should. And when you care about other people, even if you don't know them fully, you need to give them the freedom to respond as themselves and listen to them before you judge them for who they are. And I think that's so important, because what was happening with my relationships is, instead of having these uncomfortable conversations, I would be like, if I ask this question, they're going to think I'm too much. And I don't want to be a burden on anybody. So I'd rather withdraw and have them not be in a relationship with me because I'll be too much for them, than give them the opportunity to hear my problem and tell me, oh, it is too much, or tell me, oh, I can live with that. Like, one person I reached out to, I had a lot of feelings for, and then I realized as we were talking, I was like, oh, okay, so I was upset that I ghosted them, but the reason why I ghosted was because I value, like, owning what's going on with you. Like, communication is important for me, and if you're hurting and if you need help, it's okay with me if you say, I'm hurting, but I don't want to talk about it with you, or I don't want you to like pitch in or like try to fix it or any of that kind of stuff. I'm okay with you asking me not to help with it, but I need you to own what's going on with you and what you want, so that way we can talk, like, we have enough of an exchange where I know what the expectation is on my side, so that way I'm going with what you asked. And another person I reached out to, I realized, oh, this person was doing things for me, but I did not know how to ask them for what I needed in a relationship, because I felt like asking was too much, and that's should never be the case. You should, if especially in dating, if you're trying to be with somebody and you're thinking about, for me, I want to be somebody and be with them for the rest of my life, or as long as we're happy together, whatever, one or the other. But to do that, you kind of have to open yourself up to actually be vulnerable. And I am very vulnerable because I have this this channel. I'm talking about this, but I'm also, I think, so worried about other people's mental state that I think I block some of what's going on in the moment to make sure that I'm not burdening somebody else. When really, I'm all about communication. That's number one for me. Safety is like my flight response, so that probably might come out more, because sometimes I will freak out on people and then I'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Safety is for some reason triggers me so much that like something that was supposed to be like, "How are you doing?" will be like, "What are you doing?" And I won't realize why I'm being so aggressive until I'm like, "Oh, something was going on that made this exchange feel like it was unsafe." Maybe that's a little bit of the New York in me, because you have to be very aggressive on the street, and then you get people into a Starbucks or like a restaurant or like their house, and then everyone's really like pleasant and lovely. It's just that you don't know where the threats are, and so you put on these fronts, whereas if you just accepted people and allowed them to be who they are, I think the world would be a better place. And so that's my goal for this year, is just to stop allowing myself to create these gray zones. Like, I need communication, so I'm going to communicate. And then I'm not going to think about whether or not I'm communicating too much. If I'm communicating too much, that's something somebody else needs to tell me, if that makes sense. Because I love to communicate, I am aware that sometimes I speak more in a conversation to other people. And when that happens, I also love acting, because one of the basic rules of acting is not only do you talk, you have to make sure you listen. And not only if you're and listening is not just about the words going back and forth, it's also about the silence. And so if the silence goes on for a long time and it doesn't feel like active listening, that's when you should do a check-in and be like, hey, we've been talking for a while. Do you want to stop talking? Is it draining? Or do you want to pivot and do something else? It's just, I love speaking to you because I love this relationship that we have as friends or family or anything like that. But maybe it's too much and we've gone on for how much you can handle. Let's pivot to playing video games or like just, being there for each other. And because sometimes having friendship is about the silence too, because sometimes we want to like communicate with our friends and sometimes we just want to peace out, like, and just be like, let's watch a TV show together and just have that moment together to like bond as friends. Something that I love that I've had with friends is like, oh, I came over to be around you, but we really do both need to get some work done. So how about you go on your computer, you do what you have to do, and I'll bring out my tablet and we'll work on stuff for like an hour, and then we'll come back and check in and start, hanging out, and that's fine. Like as long as you communicate with me, I'm completely fine with that. However, a warning about this is if you have a friend who's leaving the state, the country, or on vacation for a couple of weeks, and then they're like, I really want to come see you because I don't know the next time when I'll see you. If they say that to you, please, that's a friendship encounter where you really should focus on the two of you. Because when you don't know the next time you're going to see somebody and somebody says those words out loud, that's when they want to like revel in your friendship. And if you choose that moment when they show up at your house to start doing a chore or other stuff, it makes it made me feel like, oh, I never was a friend with somebody because they wouldn't have chosen to do all this stuff the second I showed up and then told me to leave if I actually mattered to them. That's a roundabout. I'm not going to tell you who that was, but that really happened to me. And it really shattered me as growing up because I was like, I thought I was really close with this person. And I let it go because it's a gray zone. And I thought that was a clear going into black, cease to like exist, no longer friendship dynamic. And it's a hard lesson. However, I think very vital because the one thing that I try to do is, again, I love very easily. And if it's time, like, because of DBT, I've spoken about the Dear Man skill. That skill helped me so much because things happened in 2021 and 2022 that were really not good for me. And Dear Man showed me how to say, hey, I love you. We're friends. We've been friends for a very long time. I need these things because the way you've been treating me like this and this and this has not been acceptable. But maybe it's because we haven't talked about it and communication is important. But these are the things I need. And are you able to give me these things, or is it too much for you? And telling me it's too much is fine. I am an adult. I can hear that. It might be hurtful, but I love people and other, like, especially friends that are around for a very long time, enough to hear we shouldn't be friends anymore. Like, that to me is a blessing because of the way my brain works, because that gets me out of the gray zone. And when the gray zone goes away, silence. I can go back to being neutral. I no longer have to focus so much energy on wondering what happened. What did I do? Could I have done something that's better? These are all thoughts that are mind reading traps that will not serve you at all. Like, the only thing, if you're having those kind of wonderings about somebody, I would say is try to look at the Dear Man skill and figure out what you need to communicate with them so you can get out of those spaces, especially because I have anticipation anxiety. When I tell somebody I need to talk, I need that talk to happen as soon as possible. Now, you can do that faster with friends than in businesses and jobs and stuff, which doesn't help me, but like those I can kind of be like, okay, just calm down. It'll happen when we scheduled it. But like with friendships, like if I tell you that I need to talk with you about stuff, it's as soon as possible is as soon as possible for me, because I don't want to think about 1,000 different scenarios about how you could hurt me. And that's really how my brain works. It's like I could say this to them and then they'll say this to me, or they won't say this to me, but they'll do this thing to me. And it's like, it is exhausting to predict the future when you don't have visions like Raven Simone. Like, it's exhausting work to try to like play out every single fake scenario that your brain can come up with. So I'm so happy that DBT taught me that thoughts are not real. And what I mean by that is thoughts are not you. Like, when you start doing DBT, you have enough of a separation to realize, oh, well, this is something that my brain has been taught somewhat by me to send me when it thinks I'm too happy or I'm too sad or too angry. So it's kind of fulfilling a purpose that I gave to it, but that purpose is no longer needed. So it's up to me to catch those thoughts and realize, hey, I didn't actually want this thought to happen. I know that this is a way that I allow the trap to draw me down further beneath the surface, but we're going to release it and we're not going to go down this like road anymore. So thank you for coming. I release you is kind of the thing. And I am somebody who loves somebody enough to let them go. But I would like to let you go by telling you it's not working. And I love you, but we can no longer be friends, and I can still value the time we spent with each other. And I can accept that you don't want to be around me anymore. That's okay to tell me. Because that gets me out of the gray zone, especially when you told people about the stuff. I think it's important to share that. It's like, hey, it's uncomfortable, but I've told you, and I've told you what this does to me. And you told me at one point that you loved me, and so I thought that love meant that you would give me the things I asked for in those hard conversations. And I said, with Dear Man, the other option is you walk away and you're no longer friends anymore. And unfortunately, I've realized not every person is capable of being honest about how they feel or recognizing what their actions are telling somebody else. And that's okay. But I'm now aware of the gray zone and my desire to no longer allow myself to let that be a thing for me. When I love somebody, I want them to know I love them. And then when I am friends with somebody, I want them to know that I value a friendship. Now the issue is it's like they have the way that the raw, like if you drop a drop of water onto a stream and it ripples out, stream is moving, but like a still surface is what I meant. It's like you have a circle in the middle and it's supposed to be just you, and then you have the second ring and third ring and fourth ring, and it just goes out and out. And that helped me at one point, but it also feels like a gray zone because you're like, oh, is somebody the last ripple and I'm letting them go so they're no longer part of this body of water? Or are they someone who's working their way towards being a very close, intimate, very important part of my life? But yeah, those are my thoughts on the gray scale or gray zone. I hope that none of you guys have to experience the gray zone because it does a lot to my mental zone, my mental health. And I hopefully have provided enough of insight that you can either find a way out or you know how to navigate out so things get better for you wherever you are. And I'm going to wrap this episode up by saying, know that it is okay to be alone, and know that other people's perception of you is not who you are. Only you know your true character. And it's important to know that if other people aren't seeing it, you can do research about how to show that more openly. But it's okay if not everybody sees it right away, because you have value no matter what other people say or how other people view you. And as you go throughout your week, please just take a moment, take a breath in and a breath out, and just remember to show up for yourself because you matter.